Frogman Friday.
Yeah, boy. What's up, everybody? It's that time again. Welcome to the Frogman Friday Show.
Presented by Transcend, the best peptide and hormone therapy. They put your health first so you can live more and worry less. Go to transcendcompany.com/Birdman to begin your wellness transformation today.
Today, our badass guest is Ryan Hendrickson. He served 22 years as a Green Beret, retiring as a Sergeant First Class. He founded Tip of the Spear Landmine Removal Inc. in 2022 in Milton, Florida. You can catch Tip of the Spear on all social media channels, and to take a deeper dive, go check out landmineremoval.org. Brother, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Definitely been wanting to get on here for a while.
Dude, it's super awesome to have you. I always love to, this is post-service stuff, but I always like to dig in because it's such an interesting topic to talk about is the transition. We always get forced into talking about our service and all the things that go along with that, but we always seem to miss that transitional period. So for our viewers, because some of them are active, some of them are retired, but then there's a lot of people that never served that really don't understand the complexities. Can you share a little bit about what your transition was like?
Yeah. So, my transition was anything but organized and normal. Now, I had the opportunities to do that. The Army was, they had offered different things for me to do as far as you can go to this seminar or go to this recruiting, gala or whatnot like that. But I did the TAPS classes and then literally punched out after that because I was chasing contractor money. So I made, I kind of created my own demise when it came to getting out of the military and getting all of the benefits or the vocational, aspects that I possibly could have. I did TAPS classes, and once I fulfilled the basic requirements for getting out, I was punching out and on a flight to Afghanistan as a contractor to make money because I was so driven by wanting to, number one, get back to Afghanistan, and number two, to make that contractor money while we still could, because in 2019, 2020, the writing was on the wall. And so that's, that was basically my my experience with getting out. Was I did not take, full advantage of all of the opportunities that I could have. And we were talking before the show, one of the big ones, and I think you said it, I think it was called NICO or, like I didn't wait I think it was 6 months to get me into it. And I was just, I'm good. I'm gonna go ahead and bail. The VA, I already had a pretty good case for, 100% total permanent, I guess, from stepping on an IED, but I didn't take full advantage of everything that I could have. So I look back now and I'm like, was it worth it? And it's, I don't know, because I can still, just from the conversation you and I were having beforehand, I can still engage with some of those opportunities later on down the road. I don't know. Maybe it was worth it. Maybe it wasn't worth it. I have no idea, but I took off as quick as I could. And so right or wrong or indifferent, that was my experience with getting out.
Yeah, man. It's tough, right? Because I think there's like three top things that come to mind when I hear about transition. One is somebody gets out and they're absolutely devastated because they now have to do everything for themselves. They have to figure out their lifestyle, and it's a whole different change in the civilian lifestyle. It's a completely different pace and energy than it is in the military. So they struggle with that. Or they get out and they hit the ground running 100 miles an hour because they can see what there is out there and the potential, but they're not giving themselves any downtime to recuperate and relax over. You did 22 years. I did 8 years, but still there's some damage done. It needs to be dealt with. So you hit the ground running, and it's not till after you're running really hard that you start to realize, oh crap, I got a problem, or several. And then there's the group, the very unique group that actually makes a nice plan. This is typically officers. They make a nice plan it out for a long period of time, gauge the contacts, and then they transition into a place where they make a lot of money, they do less work, and they figured it out. But it's funny. I've had maybe one or two guys in the 70 shows, 72 shows we've done that have said they had a seamless transition. Like you'd mentioned, NICO didn't exist when I got out. So there wasn't even that. And when I got out, I hit the ground running super fast, and a couple years go by, and then a buddy of mine says, "You just seem off." And I'm like, "I feel fine. I'm busting my ass right now, and everything seems to be moving the right trajectory." And he's like, "You need to visit your team." And I was like, "Holy crap. Yeah, you're right." And I went out to San Diego to visit the boys, and that just gave me the energy I needed. Is that I realized that I don't have to wear a uniform to be part of the brotherhood. I don't need to be in the military. That stuff doesn't go away. When I realized that is when I could actually start to be myself and find my path. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing it too, because it's not easy for guys who are in the special operations community, as looked at as the people that go out in the darkness of the night to protect everybody, to talk about, the things that they struggle with and some of their insecurities and all that stuff. So appreciate you being vulnerable and open about that, man.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up a good point there, and I've heard from quite a few veterans that, once they're out, it's like they never existed, and I've heard that a lot. But my experience is completely different than that, because the guys that I served with on team, we talk all the time. I mean, hell, Frankie Hernandez and he got to our team in like 2013. Him and I, Afghanistan multiple times, all this other stuff. He just jumped on a trip with me to Ukraine. It's like, so my experience was a bit different than a lot of what I've heard from guys, where they're just like, yeah, once you're out, it's just like, was I ever even in? Like, yeah, but my experience was different than that. So, and it still is different, because I'm still constantly talking to guys that I served with and stuff like that. But it's extremely important. You gotta, you always, because this is, I mean, think about the time in our lives, where most of us younger men, when we join the military, we join at a very influential time in our lives. A lot of us joined, like I joined before 9/11, but a lot of people joined after 9/11, so they're joining a military at war already. They're thrust into this role that is completely 180 from anything they ever did, whether you were, high school, football star, cheerleader, whatever it is. Now you're 180. Now you're supporting a country at war. You're quote unquote, the front lines, because if you're in the military, then from the civilian world, you are the front lines for a country at war, regardless of what, you did or did not do. And so when you hang that up, I think one of the biggest issues, well, I know one of the biggest issues right now that is absolutely wrecking the veteran community is this. And I'm not a licensed or educated therapist or anything like that, but this is my opinion on it through my experience. And it's the fact that, so veterans and service members, we were called upon to do a certain thing. And when I first came in, it was the Clinton era, and it wasn't, we were doing, stuff in the Persian Gulf or whatnot like that. But after 9/11, it was revenge, or it was to avenge a country that's just, suffered one of the, or suffered the biggest terrorist attack in the United States ever. And so we're a country at war. We're a country looking for revenge. We're, we're going out to do what we think is best to protect, our friends, our families, our communities, and our country. And we're asked to do a lot, regardless of a person looking back is like, I didn't really do that much, but for the average person, you're asked to do a lot.
Yeah.
And then when you get out, what happens is you used to work at this level. and special operators are really, really struggling with this, because I used to do this. Decisions we made on the battlefield had geopolitical, consequences or benefits. We could, with Green Berets, unconventional warfare. You know what I'm saying? As far as going into these areas and building up a resistance force, training, advising, assisting, force multiplying. That's why I joined Special Forces, is I wanted to work in the human domain. And so there's a lot of huge responsibilities that you just took as an everyday task, but it's these huge responsibilities that could have at least consequences for the conflict, if not global consequences for a mistake or for fill in all the blanks. So you go from working at this level and you get out, and now all of a sudden you're sitting there trying to figure out, well, I mean, look at everything I just did. Look at who I was. The problem is a lot of veterans, and I know this from my own experience, but just listening, a lot of veterans, they want to try and make people understand what they did for the country. And people will appease them, because I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. Nobody in today's United States politically is going to come out and be like, we don't care about veterans. That is a death sentence, regardless of what aisle you're on. So veterans have the platform already. The problem is people can't understand what you've gone through, what you've done, because they weren't there. And even if they were there, they're not you. And so what happens is, especially after the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and how, what's the word? What's the good word I'm trying to use here? How contested it was. There's a lot of veterans that, they'll sit back and they'll say, what was it for? What was any of this for? And so all of a sudden, now they want people to understand, like, this is what I used to do. Or even if they're not out there trying to make people understand, in their heart and in their soul, they're like, you have no idea what I used to do. Well, right off the bat, that's a very dangerous road, in my opinion, because that's an entitlement, which, arguably speaking, a lot of veterans, they have that right to have that entitlement, but it's dangerous, because entitlement leads to victimization. And so once you don't have that entitled void filled, you don't know what I've done, you don't know where I've been, you don't know X, Y, and Z. All of a sudden, that turns into victimization. Because it's like, nobody understands me. I go to Applebee's to get a freaking thank you for your service on Veterans Day. Nobody understands what I've done, but they can't. It's impossible. And so that entitlement turns into victimization, which then all of a sudden goes down a very slippery slope with what we're seeing now with veteran suicide, veteran mental health, and stuff like that, because you had a purpose at one point. You get out, and now you no longer, according to yourself, you no longer have a purpose, because you're not operating at said level. People don't understand what you've done. And that lack of purpose is literally mentally chewing up veterans big time right now. And that's one of the big things that I, noticed in myself, was I was trying to make people understand, and I didn't do that much. I served my country. I, had some close calls. Everybody has. But I was trying to make people understand, because I was so important to myself that I thought that I needed to be important to everybody else out there. Like, you have to know what I've done. And people are gonna, oh, thank you for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But there's something called the 3 F's. And it goes like this. If you are not feeding somebody, financing somebody, or fucking somebody, there is not much that you are going to do to change their lives because of your service. It's impossible. They can have the utmost respect for veterans and tell you until they just cannot tell you anymore, thank you for everything you've done.
It is interesting. You're right. I mean, One of the things that I realized when I got out, I did not realize it until later on after I gotten out, is how unhealthy I was. And it
Mhm.
wasn't just mentally, it was physically, it was emotionally. I was exhausted. I mean, I busted my ass, but I was just tired. I was burned out. And
Yeah.
then I get into the business world and I'm moving as hard as I can. And I'm like, oh, how long is this going to last before I just completely fall on my face? So, there's a lot of stuff. I'm glad that NICO exists, and there's starting to be other organizations like the Honor Foundation that's actually helping guys transition, put their resumes together, understand how to talk and articulate what they do and what their true core values are and what their expertise are, the
Mhm.
value adds. But there's more being done for vets. This is why it's something I say, like, if you're having a bad day and you're a veteran and you're saying, woe is me, that's on you, because there is enough charities out there to support every damn thing that has happened to us, even in every state. So you
Yeah.
have the means to do it. You just got to get up off your ass and go do it, and stay connected with your brothers and be very open about, like, I'm not doing good, because that's the easiest way to find out that other guys are just like you and they maybe have the answer to where they go to get fixed. So,
Yeah.
wild question. How does a
Mhm.
guy who steps on an actual IED get into landmine removal?
Yeah, no, that's a pretty wild question. So in Afghanistan, my job on an ODA team was an 18 Charlie. They call us demo experts, but you're not as I'm not an expert at demolition. I just know how to use a lot of C4 and things go boom, and you're like, yeah, I'm an expert. But you have very good knowledge of demolitions, foreign and U.S. demolitions. Well, along with that came I guess you could say the additional duty or the additional tasker of, oh, well, you're a demolitions guy. Well, then you're also the guy that finds IEDs as we are, assaulting an objective, a compound, target, whatever. And so that's also your job. Here's the metal detector, and now go out and make sure nobody gets blown up as we are, moving to this objective. Because the Taliban, they're very smart, and ISIS, Al Qaeda, same thing. They're not going to go. They're not going to go blows to blows with us. And they also knew our rules. If they're not shooting at us from a compound, regardless if we knew they were in there or not, chances are we can't drop the compound or bomb all the way up to it to do sympathetic detonation of IEDs that could be in our path, which is kind of what they do in Ukraine right now. And it's I think it's great, but we had a different set of rules. We were worried more about collateral damage, civilian infrastructure, stuff like that. It's like, okay, so that was also a tasker, is being in the front. And now, I'm up there with the metal detector and I'm trying to clear, or not clear, but I'm trying to mark the safe path, because I'm not clearing anything. I'm not blowing up anything as we're moving to the objective. I'm just marking danger areas so we move around them. And then, there's thousands of IEDs. You can come back and blow them up later on if you want, but chances are it's like, that was a $2 IED. Yeah, we're just gonna warn the locals about it. They already know where they are anyways. Mission complete. Get on the birds and get out. So it went from my job on an ODA to, and then I went back to Afghanistan as a jet contractor and working for CAC Wexford. And great job, but I was an advisor for IEDs, counter UAS, basically a counter threat advisor. And when I left Afghanistan about a month before the full withdrawal, I came back home and I was just lost. I was in that kind of numb stage because I had helped close down New Antonick, Fob Dwyer. I saw the closure of CAF, all of these major hubs that I had grown up as a Green Beret around. Now all of a sudden they're just deserted ghost towns. In my mind, I couldn't quite comprehend it. It was just like, how is this, like, literally a couple deployments ago we'd come in here to do a resupply, go over here to I think it was called a green bean or something like that, or go grab Burger King and have diarrhea for 2 weeks. But still, we had like all these memories. I don't know why shitting always comes into a vet or a soldier's memory, but it always has to do with shitting somewhere.
Always.
But all these memories, and now they're closed down. And then when I got to Bath and we were closing down Bath, it was just this weird, like, I don't even know how to explain it because I don't think I quite comprehend it yet, years later. But it was just this weird feeling like, what is going on here? Not to mention all the politics behind withdrawing out of NKC or should we do it out of, all that stuff. But, then I leave Afghanistan and I get home and I have, that one thing that my dad said is very dangerous for a man, and that's time to think.
Yeah.
And so now I have all this time to think. And I just start, going through everything. And then I start to go down that entitled, victimized role where it's like, look at everything that we did. And then, I love, oh man, being a victim is so easy. It's like, oh, I stepped on an IED, poor me, and what was it for? And then the more sinister thought is the friends that, never made it out. So, you start to think about that. And then you start to become a victim of it. And then you start to resent people around you because it's like, you don't fucking know, man.
Yeah.
Like, you have no idea. But then again, like, like my old man said, like, who made you God to try and force these people to understand what you're going through? He's like, who made you God? Why do you think you're so important that everybody needs to care about what Ryan Hendrickson is going through or the mental state of Ryan Hendrickson? He said, number one, you need to get over yourself. And number two, you need to get your head straight because nobody goes home and thinks about Ryan Hendrickson. Surprise, but they don't. Like, get over yourself. And now get out there and start helping people. So then a couple months later, we're watching the buildup on the border, Belarus and Russian border to Ukraine, and then the full-scale invasion. Obviously the war starts in 2014. Some would say 2008, but 2014. Now the full-scale invasion, the special military operation, whatever Putin calls it. And I'm just watching it unfold on TV, and it's just like, wow. In my lifetime, I got it. Armenia, Azerbaijan, that's a near-peer conflict. There's other near-peer conflicts, but I've never seen a near-peer conflict unfold on TV like that since maybe Desert Storm.
Yeah.
And as I'm watching it unfold, it's just like, there's no way. And I'm glued to my TV day after day after day. It's like, but this nagging feeling just kept wrenching at me. It's like, what can you do to help? And then I would always talk myself out of it. It's Ukraine. It's like, there's nothing I can do to help. Just, go team, stuff like that. But it just kept nagging at me. And it's that feeling that, I know it's in our motto as Green Berets, De Oppressor Labir, but special operators I can speak to, all of us have that feeling inside ourselves is like, what can I do to help? Run to the sound of gunfire, all that other stuff that makes great poems. But it was this nagging feeling, this De Oppressor Labir, to free the oppressed. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to go, but what am I even going to do? It's like, do I want to go over there and fight? It's like, nah, I don't think I want in on that. So opportunity presented itself in the beginning of March of 22 to go over and help this organization evacuate women and children out of areas that the Russians were moving into. And of course my contracting job said, yeah, no, you can't take a leave without pay and go and do it. So I quit. Don't know why. Money was good, but just made a knee-jerk reaction, kind of like when I got out of the military super quickly to go chase money. Well, super quickly I quit, and then I was on a flight to Krakow, Poland, and then getting moved across the border and making my way to Kyiv to link up with this missionary organization that was evacuating women and children out of areas that the Russians were coming into around Kyiv. So about middle of April timeframe, as the Russians started to conduct their withdrawal to the east, we started moving into areas that they had occupied, Bucha, European, and stuff like that. And it was bad. I've never seen destruction and death on that level before, on a near peer level like that. We've all seen destruction and death, just from Afghanistan, Iraq, stuff like that. But I've never seen it on this level before. It was intimidating. It was intense to see what Bucha had turned into, this vibrant city or suburb. And it was just completely leveled. European, the same way. And so as we start to move aid in there, and we're bringing in a lot of medical supplies and food and stuff like that, and people are starting to come out of, the basements and all this other stuff. And it just seeing what people had to live through for, 40 plus days and stuff like that, it really, started to open my eyes to this side of war that I don't really deal in. We, as I was saying earlier, Navy SEALs, MARSOC, Green Berets, Army Rangers, stuff like that, we're really good at one aspect of war. But then there's a whole other aspect. Once we get on those helicopters and leave, there's a whole other aspect that now I'm being subjected to. And it was a huge eye-opener for me. Well, as civilians start to come back to these areas to see what's left, start to rebuild their lives, they start hitting landmines and booby traps, leave-behinds. And so the Russians had completely mined all these areas, because if you're going to conduct a withdrawal, what are landmines? What is the purpose of landmines? Terrain denial, right?
Yep.
And so if I'm going to use landmines, I'm trying to deny this terrain. And so, for example, in Ukraine, the majority of eastern Ukraine is all mined. And the reason for that is because if I can mine all these fields, because it's Ukraine's an agricultural country. And so if I can drive a combine tractor on this farm field, I can run mechanized equipment across it to assault trenches and fighting positions, all this other stuff. So I'm going to mine all of these fields. Therefore, you have to go onto these roadways where every single intersection is probably a target reference point for some artillery piece somewhere. And that's the purpose of it, is I have to make you do what I want you to do. And then I'm just going to chew you up with artillery. And it's smart. Well, as they started coming back, civilian casualties started getting pretty high because of landmines and stuff like that. So the experience that I had in Afghanistan, no, I'm not God's gift to demining. I am not EOD. I'm just an 18 Charlie engineer, but I had some experience. I've stepped on one, which arguably I still found it. So I'm really good at finding all explosive devices that are in my path, regardless of how I do it. I can find them. But I started helping out. So Ukraine's answer for this was, so they have this thing called the territory defense. And the territory defense is like neighborhood watch, but with like PKMs, RPGs, stuff like that. And so Ukraine's answer for this was, okay, the territory defense, you're from this area. You're from these villages. So now we need you to demine. Well, you got these kids that are just like, what's a landmine? Or how am I supposed to do this? And so I started to help out with training these guys with what we used to do with the National Mine Reduction Group in Afghanistan. So in force multiplying, that's what Green Berets are probably the best at in the world, is training, advising, assisting, and force multiplication. That's why I joined it, is because I love that world. And the MACV-SOG era and the Vietnam era of, you're creating these armies and these denied and non-permissive environments. And just, I love it. And so I was like, okay, well, I do know this world very well. And train, advise, assist, force multiply. And so I started doing that with these teams. And then I would go home and raise money through social media. And I would buy a bunch of detectors and remote pull equipment and everything. And I'd bring it back as quick as I could, train the guys up on it. And then we'd go out to the minefields and, we would start to work. And now all of a sudden, okay, this team is competent. They're good. Now I'll move on to the next team. What do you guys need? Go back home, rinse and repeat. Well, by the time when I actually had time to sit back and think about everything I was doing, there was one big thing that just shot off the page to me. And I now have a purpose. And so all of that stuff that I was dealing with, and a lot of it, even when I was on active duty, a lot of that stuff I was dealing with no longer was an issue, because now I have a purpose and I have a sense of service again. And yeah, it's not what I did, as a Green Beret, but it's different. I'm seeing another side of war, and I'm helping, and in a country that I don't know anything about. I had zero idea about Ukraine before I even went over there.
Yeah.
And so that's what got me into, and I'm sorry, it's a very long explanation for it, but
good.
That's what actually got me into it. Was what special operators do the best is we can sit around and look, and I'm going to go find work. I'm going to figure out how to always improve my foxhole. I'm going to find work and do something to help somebody out. And that's all I did. Is there was a need, and I was like, oh, well, I have an idea. And I never tell I make sure Ukrainians know, it's like, hey, look, I'm not a EOD. And IEDs in Afghanistan are completely different than Ukraine, and a near peer, or the use of landmines in a near peer conflict. Totally different. Insurgency to near peer, night and day. But a lot of the fundamentals are still the same. And I can advise you guys, I never say train, because training means, oh, well, he taught us. No. I can advise you guys on my experiences from Afghanistan about how I would go about this. But in the end, it's up to you. But I'll be here on the field with you. And so that is, and then now you're going down a world that I think, Green Berets are really good at, and that's rapport. That's relationship building with and I hate to call it indigenous, but that's what it is. Relationship building with indigenous forces or personnel. And you're just working in that human domain. And so that's all. I mean, once I figured out that it was no different than what I did as a Green Beret, and the reason why I joined Special Forces to be a Green Beret, to work in the human domain, to work at force multiplication through indigenous, population, stuff like that, it got really easy for me. And now all of a sudden I'm back. And I had this sense of purpose again, and this sense of service. Well, once we started the NGO, the 501c3, basically the whole reason behind that was because I wanted to share with other veterans what really helped me, because a lot of veterans, they're suffering right now. Veterans are suffering in silence right now. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, although it seems like it was a while ago, it wasn't that long. And so the full impact, I do believe that the mental health aspect of the way we left Afghanistan has not fully hit everybody yet. And if you don't get ahead of it, then you're gonna have a major crisis on your hands. We already have a suicide crisis, but you're gonna have a crisis on your hands that's gonna be really, really difficult to get a hold of. And people ask me, well, then what do you think? And I was like, we gotta have a way to give veterans that purpose again, because it all boils back to, I used to do this and now I'm nothing. It's like, well, you're only nothing to yourself because you're telling yourself you're nothing. And then people will want to compare. Well, I can't go to Ukraine and do this. No one said you had to go to Ukraine. There are so many ways to get involved. There are so many ways to help people. There are so many things you can do. I chose Ukraine because I was like, well, there's something going on here. I'm going to go check it out. I didn't think it would turn into what it did, but that's the biggest thing that I see right now in the veteran community that I'm just passionate about. Yeah, removing landmines and making these areas safe again. So, mainly kids. That's the big trigger for me. But people don't have to worry about their next step. Yeah, that's the mission. And I'm passionate about it. But my overall why I'm doing this is because it gives that sense of service and purpose again. Because without it, you can only turn food into shit for so long in life. Keep marching through life until you're gonna take a long pause and say, what is any of this for? And then a lot of guys make they make some pretty bad decisions once they get to that point. And you and I both know it's the numbers are unacceptable.
Yeah.
But it's the truth. And I believe it all revolves around purpose. You have to have a purpose, and you need to feel that what you are doing right now is making a difference, because what you did in the military made a difference, and it did. And now you got to find out, what's my purpose now, and how can I make a difference for the better? And that's, I don't know. Maybe I am kind of Dr. Phil. I guess he's not even a doctor, but maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's something to what you're doing, to finding purpose again. It's everybody in the world needs purpose. I don't care if you wear a uniform or not. You absolutely have to have purpose. That's what drives you, whether it's your children or God or whatever your purpose is. You have to find it. If you don't have it, you better start looking for it. Yeah, the suicide rate and the epidemic is out of control. And it's very difficult to be operating at a certain level and then not being operating at that level anymore. But you being able to go into being able to help people, enabling other people to be safe, being able to bring your brothers in to support the same mission, where you jock on the same gear and you go do a mission that's worth it. I mean, what a cool, encompassing organization. I find it very fascinating. So I've heard a statistic that Ukraine has more landmines than anybody in the world. Is that true?
Yeah, it's the most mine country in the world that we know of, because we haven't been past the occupied areas. So the zero line, we have no idea the mine belts and the mine defensive layers that are in areas that no one has been yet.
Wow.
So yeah, it's yeah, right now it's the most mine country in the world, and I think probably a quarter of it is yet to be seen, and it's going to be more mines. I mean, I've been in fields that a square meter could have 5 or 6 anti-personnel mines in it.
Jesus.
Yeah, well, think about this. So PFM1 butterfly mines, the butterfly mines. All right, so they're notorious. Afghanistan, kids love them. Well, there's this machine, and I'm probably going to butcher the nomenclature on it. I think it's the MUV 62 or something like that. Anyways, it can shoot out close to 12,000 butterfly mines. Just one tracked vehicle can shoot out close to 12,000 of those butterfly mines. And when they leave the canisters on the machine, each canister holds 72. When it leaves the canister, it'll project them for 100 meters. So that's one delivery method. They can be delivered via rocket. They can be delivered artillery. There's a bunch of different delivery methods for these machines, but they're scatterable mines, which means that they're not placed in a pattern. They're not placed, by hand or by a mine laying machine. They're literally scatterable mines. And when you walk into a PFM1 minefield, yeah, it's not going to do too much to you. It'll blow, some toes off, but your life is forever changed.
Right.
Because you're probably going to have a below the knee amputation just over a tiny little butterfly mine. But that's what they're for. They're trained denial, but they're also to maim, because if I can injure you, that's going to take quite a few people out of the fight taking care of you. And if you're in a scattable minefield, I'm probably going to get, a few more. And there's videos in Ukraine of, multiple guys hitting landmines on an objective. It's just boom, and guys start screaming, and then boom and boom, and it's like you're in a freaking minefield there. But just the scattable mines alone, and then you have the cluster munitions, the dud rate on cluster munitions. Most of these mines and clusters are all supposed to have a self-destruct mechanism, but the dud rate on them is over 40%. And so if you've shot off millions of these things, think about 40% of those still laying around that were supposed to self-destruct. So the self-destructing sequence has already gone through, but it failed to self-destruct. So now what are you looking at? You got an extremely sensitive, pissed off piece of something there on the ground that's going to make you have a very bad day. And then the military mines in general, the TM62 anti-tank mines, TM62 P3s, those are the 99% plastic anti-tank mines. The only thing you can find on them with a detector is the detonator. Those things, those are brutal because it's still 17, almost 18 pounds of explosives, of TNT inside of that. You're going to have a very, very bad day. And these minefields, PMN mines from the PMN 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, just, I can go down the list. But the thing is there's millions of these mines. People say, how long will it take to demine Ukraine? And I was like, well, you see what's going on in Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. Okay, now let's go even further back. All of Europe, that was affected by World War II. I said, I don't think it's possible to completely demine all of Ukraine with the amount of landmines that I've seen in just the areas that I've been. We're based solely out of Kharkiv Oblast, which is, northeast. And the fields we've been to there, it's just like, there's just no way. So then you got to start prioritizing. Okay, well, the country wants these areas cleared because they want to start getting agricultural. They want to start getting grain to the ports and then ships to, the countries that need it the most. Because don't forget, food is also being used as a weapon here. If I can prevent you from getting Ukrainian grain or agricultural exports to these countries, I can backfill you with my grain and my agricultural exports. And now all of a sudden food has become a weapon. But that's not about transitioning from the military or anything like that. That's just Ryan Hendrickson's, I have too much time to think kind of stuff. But yeah, it's definitely it is the most mined country in the world easily. And we still don't know, maybe even more than a quarter of the minefields, because no one's, deminers haven't been past the zero line yet. Sappers, but the stories that the sappers are coming back with, yeah, it's gonna be something else when this does.
That's interesting. It's something that you bring up that's a real revelation. Is like, we are special operations. We're tasked to go and do a direct action mission, do some type of mission, and exit, go somewhere else, do whatever we need to do, and we're out. And then I remember when the humanitarian pieces were coming in, no idea what they were doing. We used to laugh, kind of like, okay, go have fun cleaning up. And
yeah,
when you get to go to the other side of it to see the chaos, destruction, just what the devastation looks like to the city, to the community, to the families that had nothing to do with the wars, and they're fully into it. It's horrific. And it requires us to step out and do something. So you have huge minefields, you have a massive problem, you put together a solution. I mean, how many people are you helping, or how many waves have you been out there, and what is your typical goal right now? What are you trying to do per trip?
So I just got back from trip number 9 in December. So yeah, I got home right before Christmas because I don't want to deal with that minefield from my wife.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I got home for Christmas. That was trip number 9. Basically, what we're doing right now. So again, let's go back to the Special Forces, Green Beret, bread and butter, train, advise, assist, force, multiply. So that's what I'm doing in Ukraine as well with Ukrainian teams. So we have a Tip of the Spear Landmine Removal Ukraine. We have a Ukrainian NGO as well. We have the U.S. NGO that funds the Ukrainian NGO. And so we have our demining teams there. And basically what the trips revolve around for me is come home, raise money. I know what the equipment needs are. We need this amount of detectors or vehicles or whatever it is, or we need to be able to fund more Ukrainian deminers to the team. So, all right, this is what the needs are. I do an aggressive crowdsourcing, social
raise,
media
crowdfunding.
campaign.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, social media campaign to raise funds, get the funds. Okay, good to go. Buy the equipment, everything like that. Now it's like, okay, next mission. And then when I'm going over there, not only are we equipping the teams, continually doing training, going out to the fields and stuff like that, but now I'm kind of focused on the force multiplication part. So in the beginning, I was going to the fields and, it was like, all right, yeah, we're doing great work. We just removed, 500 anti-tank mines here, 700 anti-tank mines here. It's like, yeah, we're doing great work. You're not even putting a drop in the bucket. Like, you don't even see the bucket. There's that many landmines. And so my mind, it was like, all right, how do we actually start to make a difference? Force multiplication. That's the only way you're going to, getting deminers on the ground in the minefields and numbers, trained numbers. And so our target audience is this. And I love this. I love this, what we're doing right now. We've been doing it all 2024. It's 2025. Yeah, 2024. Sorry. So Ukrainian veterans that can no longer serve in a combat role anymore. They've been, whether it was a lot of TBIs, man, artillery and TBIs, 2022, we were in some areas that got, we got hit really hard with artillery. And I was like, I do not want any part of this. Artillery and FPV drones, no way.
Oh yeah.
But,
No.
but because it was, not only was it scary and earth, soul shattered. I don't even know how to. We've been mortared, in Afghanistan and stuff like that. And I got 82 millimeter coming in. That shakes you up really good. But an artillery barrage, it was nothing. I've never experienced anything like that before in my life, and it just shakes you from the core. And you don't even know. It's like, well, where do we run? And they're like, where are you going to run to? You don't know where that next round's coming. Just stay here, stay in the ditch, stay, it's like, okay. But have, force multiplying these teams with Ukrainian veterans, because again, it's given them a purpose. But I had this, it kind of fell in my lap where, I was working with this team and they're like, yeah, we're all discharged Ukrainian, soldiers. One guy's missing an arm, another guy burns all over the place, stuff like that. And I'm just like, huh, so you guys want to demine? Like, yeah, this is our service to our country now. We want to come out here and make our country safe again as well. And so after working with these guys for a while and they're on the team, all of a sudden it hit me. And I was like, wait a second. You can have U.S. veterans training, advising, assisting, and equipping Ukrainian veterans in pursuit of a mine-free Ukraine. Because not only am I getting the benefits that I talked about earlier with that sense of service, that sense of purpose, I'm helping people out, and other people are getting it as well because they're funding us to do it. But we're enabling Ukrainians to take their country back from landmines, from these hidden explosives that are going to that once civilians have free reign to move about, the injury and death rate, numbers are going to skyrocket because Ukrainian farmers, you can go online right now and you can look up and you'd be like, wow, these Ukrainian farmers turned their tractor into basically, an Israeli bulldozer where it can get hit with everything around it and it just keeps working the fields because they don't have time to wait for the government to come out and demine their fields.
Such
so
a
they're
horrible
taking,
shame too, man, because it's like
yeah.
you can't go to these certain places if you're a civilian or shit. Anybody wouldn't want to walk through these fields, but
Hmm.
it's all off limits because it's so dangerous, yet they still have to make a living. This is
Yep.
crazy, man.
It's a prison. It's a prison. And in landmines, they're oppressors. And so it all falls into, what I, did as the Green Berets, freeing the oppressed and force multiplying. But I'm able to do it with veterans, through veterans. And yeah, they're Ukrainian veterans. And I've had a lot of people is like, well, why don't you use your efforts in the United States? We've got a lot of veterans that need help. How come you're over there helping Ukrainian veterans? And I was like, you're absolutely right. The minute the U.S. has a landmine crisis, I will do everything in my power to be the tip of the spear of it, like
Yeah.
100%. But they are also correct um, in another way is where we are U.S. veterans. Most of us soft, but we are U.S. veterans that are working in this environment with Ukrainian veterans for Mine for Ukraine. And I do believe that this sense of service and purpose, it's gonna, once you can do a trip to Ukraine and then you go home and it's infectious, you're
Yeah.
gonna want to share with people what you did, and then planting that seed in other people's mind. And maybe someone's like, man, I want to get into something. Maybe I can do this, because veteran entrepreneurials, I probably just completely butchered that, but I had it on the 365 word a day. Like, here's your word for today. I'm like, yeah, entrepreneurial. Like, all right. Well, like that is, you can't think of a better, like, you got veterans that are trying to do something, big, and all they need to do is just connect the pieces just a little bit, like what you're doing. Like what you're doing is so powerful and important, because a veteran may be sitting back and is like, well, I don't even know how to get started. And then
Yeah.
you have Ryan, you know, this is how you get started. Now take all the lessons you learned from the military, and that, and your sense of, or your work ethic, and hell, something simple like, I need to be here 10 minutes early because that's the way I was raised in the military. Um, like, take that and now go and do big things as a veteran. And that's why I love, what you're doing, is because veterans, like everybody, not even veterans, everybody gets stopped at, and they can talk themselves out of, well, I don't even know how to start.
Yeah. Of
And
course,
that's,
man. That's always the
yeah,
thing. Whether it's like you're out of shape and you want to get back into shape or into health, you go to Google and you're like, fuck this. This is too much
yeah.
stuff to try to figure out. It's the same thing everywhere, man. So,
Mhm.
for all the people listening who could be and should be donors to you in the future, what does a capital's needs list look like for you right now, currently? What kind of money are you trying to raise? What are you trying to
Mhm.
buy with that? Can people help you with right now?
So right now, I guess in our 10-meter target, you would say, is there's a demining machine. And what it is, so you remember the mine rollers, we would have RGs, and then on the front of it would be mine rollers. So imagine a, mm, maybe like a skid steer tractor, but on the very front of it is mine rollers, and they can roll through these fields, that have the PFM1 butterfly mines or the PMN mines or something like that. They can roll through these fields, and they basically, all you're doing is you're setting off anti-personnel mines, or tripwired mines like the OZM 72, Palm 2s, um, all of your claymores, stuff like that. But it's setting it all off remotely, because it's just a guy with a remote control tractor with 1,000 pounds of mine rolling, capability on the front of it, which we used a lot in Afghanistan. Well, that's our first. That's what I'm trying to fund right now. It's $150,000 for one of the tractors. Um, but other than that, the biggest funding things that we have is just operational costs, because as we bring on more Ukrainian deminers, we have to be able to fund it, whether it's us, in our mission, getting to Ukraine and doing what we do over there, or detectors, equipment, remote pole equipment, all that other stuff. And so when people ask me, they're like, well, how much do you need? It's like, well, the more money we get, the more equipment I can buy. So it's
Right.
kind of like, I can't answer that question, but I can tell you what we're trying to do. And the mine rollers, that's a big one, $150,000 there. There's also flail machines, but those are $465,000. So that's not even on our radar at all, because it's just a lot of money.
Yeah.
Well, so is $150,000, but you know what I'm
Sure.
saying. But yeah, that's the big thing, is just operational costs to actually keep the momentum going. The more money we bring in, the more deminers we can, more Ukrainian deminers we can bring to the team, and then we just keep building and building and building. But we can't overshoot what we're trying to do, because we can have a great 2024 and then nothing comes in 2025, and now all of a sudden you're having to tell teams like, hey man, sorry, we can't support this. But I'm also very vigilant into the fact that, hey, look, this is not a forever thing. Like, you guys need to start to build the foundation to support yourselves. And so not only are we building up demining teams and getting getting them equipped and trained and everything like that, and get them on the fields and advising them and assisting them on the fields, but it's also that back channel stuff that, the stuff in the background where it's like, hey, we need to start building you guys up a funding stream so you can take this over, because I'm trying to work myself out of a job.
Yeah.
I want to empower you guys. I don't want to be in Ukraine until I'm 70 something years old. I want to flood your country with Ukrainian deminers that are out here. They're self-sustaining. Yeah, they got that start because I was able to come in through, donors. We were able to come in and give you that start, but it's just the same with us. If I know how to start and what the path looks like what you do with veterans, then I can take the ball from here, because every single one of our team, like our Ukrainian team and the command structure, they all know it's like, hey, look, this could get pulled at any time. You have to be able to sustain yourself. That's the key here. This is not a free hand me out from Uncle Sam. I'm helping you guys get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
But how are you going to sustain this? You have to look into this. It's not just about pulling mines from minefields. How do you keep this going for 10, 15, 20 years? Because you will be demining for 10, 15, 20 years. I promise that. In Ukraine, at least.
Wow. Well, everybody listening, hey, obviously every charity needs donations, but this is a very new and unique taste on charities. We're focused so heavily on the veteran and first responder causes in America, and they are doing quite well. There's over 40,000 causes. But we do also have to look at our allies and look around the world to see how can we make a difference. And Ryan's obviously making a huge difference here for that community. Imagine waking up and not being able to go on your front lawn or go down the street to see a neighbor or do anything because you're fear of losing a leg or dying. So he needs your support and help. You can go to landmineremoval.org and make a donation. And go check out the website because they're very informative. He puts a lot of information and content out there. So not only can the donors see where the money's going, but just so you can stay informed as to what they're doing, how they're building their community, how they're building their teams, and how they're actually eliminating a lot of these mines. So go check it out, landmineremoval.org. And if you have any questions, all the information for Ryan and his foundation will be after this video. So you can get in touch directly and stay informed. Also on all social media channels, make sure to go give a like so you can follow it if you're more of a social media person than a website person. Before we close out, man, I always want to ask this one big thing because it's extraordinarily important.
Mm-hmm.
We all get something during our time, and I used to say it was service, but it could be before service, could be during the service. There's always that one quintessential story of a person who changed your life, whether it be a soldier, a brother of yours who gave his life for the country, or somebody who did something to change the trajectory of your life, and they still may be living. Do you have a story that most people wouldn't know that you can share with everybody? Because the untold stories are the things that need to be told the most.
Yeah, I got a lot of them, to tell you the truth. But Mm. And I have stories of both, U.S. and Afghans. One of our Afghan partners, good friend of mine, was killed in Boglan on one of the missions we were on. But yeah, he definitely made me look at life a lot different. But I would say, man, I mean, besides my dad, which he's also was in the military, but I would, yeah, I would probably, I mean, I don't think I have one that just stands out blaringly to me. There's so many. I've had good leaders, and I've learned so much from bad leaders too. I've learned actually even more from bad leaders than I did from good leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is crazy. But I yeah, I would just I think one of the biggest takeaways that I got that really propelled me even going into special forces, because I'm I'm a 3 branch guy. I started off in the Navy, then I went in the Air Force, and I went in the Army in 2007. And
Jeez.
so yeah, so I didn't really make up my mind, but I remember going in the Army, and they had the 18 X-ray contract for special forces, and I was just like, I bring nothing to the table at all. I was, in the Navy, I was, just bosun's mate. In the Air Force, I just worked on the flight line. I was like, yeah, I grew up a country boy, shot guns and wandered around the woods and stuff like that. But what am I actually going to bring to this? And there was this instructor, and he's like, look, man, I can tell right away that you're going to be successful as long as you cross this threshold that you put up for yourself. He said, you're defeating yourself right now more than anybody else. You've already failed the Q course, and you haven't even gone to selection.
Wow.
Because mentally you're telling yourself you bring nothing to the table. He said, what I need you to do is to understand that it's not about you. It's about the mission. He said, so this is, and I'll never forget, because I was going to go in through infantry. And he said, look, man, this is what I'm going to do. I want you to get the 18 X-ray contract. We're going to put in a memo letter, and it could have been complete bullshit. I don't know. But if anything happens to you, you're going to go to Fort Lewis with the infantry unit that you wanted to, because I wanted to get back towards Oregon again, and all that other stuff, which is where I'm from. But he said, but I don't think this is the case. He's like, I'm looking at you right now, and I know you're going to graduate, but you gotta drop all of these perceived notions that you don't have what it takes. And so when I got to the Q course, or I'm sorry, when I got to selection, I remember there was this one point where I was just like, I don't belong here at all. And then I saw this guy, and he was like, well, I'm done. And he walked to the truck, and he's like, I'm done. I was like, whoa, no, I'm going to keep going. And so all of a sudden, it's like, as people started dropping, and this could be a real negative thing to say, I don't know, but I started feeding off of it. Like, man, I'm still here, and like, just keep going and going and going in that competitive part, because they're not dropping, like, they're not dead. It's just, they're like, yeah, fuck this, I'm done. And so, but at the very end, that instructor was absolutely right. Once I broke through that barrier of what I didn't think that I could do, what I didn't think I brought to the table, how insignificant I thought I was. Once I broke through that barrier, it was great. I was loving it. I was experiencing everything I wanted to. It was just this change in mindset, and it took that one guy believing in me that wasn't my dad. I can listen to my dad and it's like, oh, well, he's supposed to say that. He's my dad, even though my dad called me a dumbass more than my name. But it's, that one person that I had no idea who he was at all. He just said, no, I got a feeling about this. No, you're going X-ray. It's like, well, I don't want to. I want to infantry. He goes, no, I think you're going to be standing at the end. Yeah,
That's
he said, you're
amazing.
going to surprise yourself. So I guess that, like, looking back, that's probably, that sticks out in my head. But I have so many just amazing examples of leadership and people that have, changed my life for the better, whether it was good leadership or bad leadership. And, I've seen leadership that was just absolutely phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
watching how this first sergeant handles his troops, or outsider looking in, and just like, that's a leader right there. That's someone that he's got it. He's got it. The men and the mission.
Anytime these stories come out, brother, like when it comes up in your head, something that I'm going to do a better job of doing myself this year. Anytime you pull up a story in your head and you're like, ooh, that's good, share it. Get on social, make the video, and just push it out there, because it is so true how, this whole idea of influencer is absolute garbage. Because I always tell buddies who actually have some kind of a social media following, like, are you truly famous? You are? Okay, cool. Well, go walk down the street in my town and see if anybody notices you or runs you, grab you an autograph or whatever. It's bullshit. It's just an online thing. But you never know who is a friend of yours or somebody who is truly following you or watching you, that hears that one story and it's just what they need for that moment. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been on social media where I'm just having a hard time or a bad day, or I'm legitimately in the dumps, and I'll see somebody post something, and what fires me up is when other people succeed. So if I see you attack a goal and hit your goal, I'm gonna lose my shit and get super excited about it, and that just gives me the pep in my step. People react differently to things, but keep sharing these stories, man. Keep telling people. It's so important. And then you're bringing a story to us with Ukraine that nobody in America knows. And we'll talk offline. I have some connections for you out there that I think will be very beneficial for you. And again, for everybody listening, this is a very different and unique charity, and there's massive life consequences. Like, they are removing stuff that can instantly kill you, whereas a lot of these charities are working on helping prevent bad health over a period of time. So you can make dramatic impact ASAP, and simply just go to the website landmineremoval.org, and you can make a donation, and follow Ryan on different social media platforms. We'll share them after this so you can stay in touch. And if there's any new updates that ever come in, Ryan, this show is for you. It's for all SF special operators. So you can come on anytime and share new updates, and any marketing material you have, we'll push out.
Yeah, all the veterans that are listening, remember, everybody has a story, and just like Ryan just said, you don't know who's listening to your story. You don't know who's listening to that message that could change that person's life for the better. So there's strength and vulnerability. Sharing some very intimate stuff about you, like I've started to open up more and started to share some of the darker sides of things that I've went through. I've had more feedback on the people that's helped, because there's strength through vulnerability. So don't be afraid to be vulnerable, because you have no idea who's going to hear that message, and it could even save somebody's life. So share your story, like Ryan said. It's critical.
Amen, brother. Well, the man, the myth, the legend, Ryan Hendrickson. Yeah, that's a sweet name, by the way. It's way better than Parrott. So, dude, you rock, man. Keep doing your mission, and we're going to push support your way and continue to follow you, brother.
Absolutely, man. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you in Dallas.
Frogman.